Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin Hendryx-Parker, and I'm here today for Gestalt IT. And I'm talking to Venkat Ramakrishnan, and he is at Portworx. Now, I'll do a little bit of backstory, Venkat. I've heard you refer to this as the decade of Kubernetes. Maybe the last decade was the decade of the cloud, this decade is the decade of Kubernetes. And there's been a tremendous amount of announcements coming out of KubeCon this year. And Portworx has made huge strides, it appears, to making Kubernetes that Kubernetes experience for smoother for operators and developers alike. So I'm excited to kind of talk about some of the things that came out of that. It sounds like there's a new release of PX Enterprise. You've updated with some big features. There's some really cool stuff coming around performance, like the PX Fast and Direct Access. I want to know, how do you envision customers taking advantage of some of these new features? So if you wanted to kind of just kick it off with that.
Absolutely. Calvin, first of all, really good to be here. Great spending time with you. Talking to you always makes me feel I'm 6 feet above the ground. Makes me feel like I'm flying, right? So yeah, we had a fantastic KubeCon, which we just finished, right? I mean, it's, KubeCon Valencia. We had some awesome product announcements. One of the product announcements we made is our PX Enterprise, the next gen stack of PX Enterprise that we're going to be launching very soon. PX Enterprise is our leading industry leading data management product for Kubernetes and containers, and it can run on any cloud or any data center infrastructure like VM or bare metal as well. So that is, we have led the market in creating the data management for containers and Kubernetes, the market category. And we have also led the market in innovations and features, and number of customers that I was running in production, and thousands of nodes so far over the last few years. What we have done with our PX Enterprise product is our next generation stack. We just announced as a tech preview. It can draw. We have taken a lot of steps towards further optimizing performance in the stack, so you could actually drive a lot more workloads per server, right? As container market matures and evolves, and as Kubernetes becomes pervasive everywhere, you will see a lot of folks trying to move their workloads into these Kubernetes environments, right? So initially it is like, oh, let's prove the ground. Let's make sure we can run Kubernetes in production. The next step is, you know what? I'm going to try, much more complex workloads on Kubernetes. And the step after this is even more of a maturity model where you're going to see people trying to run their entire mission critical infrastructure, like many of our customers today, in Kubernetes. And almost all of these apps and all the cloud native or the modern apps, plus even some of the legacy apps, are going to be running on some kind of a Kubernetes environment, either on premise on servers or on VMs or on the cloud. And people would want to run, more, want to get more out of their infrastructure. Always they want to get more returns on the investment they are making, so they want to run more apps per servers. They want to get more density out of their infrastructure. And what we have done now is to ready our data management software to handle even more intensive workloads at a much higher density, so we can deliver unmatched performance with the lowest total cost of ownership to our customers, and that helps them run more applications on any cloud than they have ever done before on Kubernetes.
It's hard to believe we used to run, one application per one server, and maybe we had a utilization of a couple percent in our
Yep.
data center.
Yeah. Now you're running. There are some customers who run thousands of apps in tens of server nodes now, and they now, with Portworx data management, they have the ability to tier those apps to the cloud, along with their data, bring it back, kind of leverage the blue green deployment models, or to kind of go from one version to the another and all of that. So what Kubernetes has done is that it has liberated app developers and platform operators from the underlying infrastructure, right? I mean, they can really get the fluidity and agility they've always wanted. And by adding PX Enterprise to the mix, they now get great performance, and with all of the agility and elasticity they need, plus unmatched data protection, security, and multi-tenancy features that PX Enterprise comes with out of the box.
Yeah, and it sounds like you can do it across any cloud now with the same tooling, especially with the new object store service, being
Yeah.
able to have that unified S3 style API access to storage
Hmm.
object store, like anywhere, no matter whether I'm doing it locally as a developer or if I've released into Amazon or I'm on Azure. It sounds like I get the same experience no matter where I put it.
Yep. So, the object service is something that's very interesting for our customers, is because PX Enterprise or data management suite has always supported block and file in workloads. Now, a lot of our customers have either running on the cloud or running on prem. They have either leverage an S3 like an object store in the cloud, or an on prem object store that's S3 compliant. They have always wanted inline, like Kubernetes control plane integrated bucket provisioning, object policies, and rate limiting and all of that. That that they don't have to go manually provision into an object store and then try to map that bucket into an app and all of that. So our scalar object service now runs in the cluster, and it delivers those kind of capabilities at a pod level, declaratively, that customers don't have to kind of go file an IT ticket and kind of have that provisioned and then map it painfully. We take all of the pain out of that system, and we kind of automate the whole process for them with our object
Yeah.
service.
I mean, speaking of other buzzwords, obviously Kubernetes is a big buzzword. 5G has also been a very large buzzword around containers and deployment. And do you see PX Enterprise making inroads at the edge? Is this a prime target or a spot for you all to be?
Yeah, by nature of our software's flexibility, and the footprint, can be can be very small. We can run in core, access, and edge with literally no modifications to the software. Right? It's the same piece of software that runs in all of these different deployment models. And Portworx for a long time has been very successful in core and the cloud, and in in access as well as in the edge. There are some very good edge deployments that we have. So, for example, one of the world's leading cruise lines runs Portworx and all of their cruise ships. Right now, I used to joke that anytime they needed a service, I would fly out and service their clusters for them. Send me to Monaco, right? So, but they have been a customer for quite some time, even through the pandemic, and all of their ships and the customer experience apps run on top of Portworx. It's a complete edge deployment. It's in fact disaggregated, disconnected edge, where these ships can cruise around wherever, and then the entire app and all of the cloud native apps run on top of Portworx. And there is a instance that runs on the cloud as well, that when the ships dock, the data gets transferred over to the cloud. So it's a fantastic use case for IoT/edge. And then we have customers, the telco customers that are running as an edge, especially around 5G, because 5G has standardized around Kubernetes, right? And Kubernetes, some of these edge apps require state, and they need to be running in these distributed RAN environment, where they need to be managed with no manual intervention. Kind of continues to run, and there are edge nodes from 3 to 10 nodes, edge deployments, or even starting from one node. Sometime you see these 5G deployments, especially around telcos, that run edge there for us with Portworx software. There's another interesting edge use case. Is one of the leading food and beverages company in the world uh, has built smart kitchens with Portworx's PX Enterprise as a edge Kubernetes clusters, 3 node Kubernetes clusters that are running, and yeah, all the burgers and fries that get made, right? It's these smart kitchens handle all of that, including managing the temperature of the oven and all of that. And those are interesting edge cases that you will see that Portworx getting deployed. So Edge is we're already there on Edge. We're getting heavily adopted on Edge. There are other companies that are building 5G stacks that have standardized on Portworx and deploying it on all the other telco companies. So you will see Portworx everywhere in Edge, and we see Edge taking off as a serious GTM business for us this year and the next year as 5G proliferates everywhere.
Yeah. So you just mentioned a key bit about deploying containers is that some of them have state, or some of them have storage needs, or some of them just need to be backed up in a way that's easy to move from one place to another, one cloud to another. I know that you released or announced backup as a service earlier this year. It sounds like the product's now reached general availability. Give some experience, or what is the experience folks can expect from backup as a service? I know you launched exclusively on AWS to start with, but what are folks can they expect from that product?
Yeah. So first of all, just stepping back a little bit, backup is our answer to customers' anxiety about how am I going to protect my Kubernetes infrastructure against, you know, infrastructure failures, user operator errors, application errors, right? And more recently, ransomware attacks, right? So that's why we built backup is to eliminate, reduce, and eliminate our customers' anxiety, and give them a strong backup and recovery suite that they can rely on, right? And also they can come to one vendor to deal with everything to do with data, right? I mean, data management, PX Enterprise, data protection, PX backup. So I look at PX backup as a time machine for Kubernetes clusters. You could just back up your Kubernetes cluster. You can wind your clock back. You can restore it, either an entire cluster or a set of namespaces or just a bunch of apps or just even one app. You can just go down to any granularity you want, right? And then with backup 2.2, we introduced ransomware protection. We introduced, object locking support where you can set your, retention periods for your backups. And once you set that, nobody else can delete those backups. So an attacker cannot take over your infrastructure and then hold your data hostage, but only you have control over your data. Now, doing all this is great, and we have tremendous adoption for our backup products. A lot of enterprises run this in production, big banks, financial institutions, manufacturing companies, pharmaceutical companies. A lot of them with mission critical infrastructure run backup today and use backup to back up their Kubernetes and app infrastructure because we back up not only the Kubernetes infrastructure, but app and all the associated data and the service bindings, everything together, right? Now, what we are finding is as people move more and more workloads into the cloud, they want to, and backup runs as a, Kubernetes service itself on your Kubernetes clusters. We didn't want to give them yet another service that they have to manage. So we said, we will manage the backup as a SaaS, as a service for you, and you just onboard your customers, or sorry, your users and your clusters into the backup service. It's a multi-tenant RBAC, highly secure environment where it's completely fenced. Customers' data is every customer is a tenant, and we will kind of manage the service for you. And that kind of led to our backup as a service product launch. We of course we announced it for with AWS first. It's going we run it on AWS today. It's kind of but we're going to expand it to support other cloud providers natively, like in a control plane integration as well. But in our first iteration, you will see that you can log into backup SaaS. You can kind of use your AWS credentials to log into your AWS account. We will automatically discover all of your Kubernetes assets, and we will register those into the backup service. And then you can decide which kind of a backup policy you can apply to those the service, and then you can let the service take care of backing it up. It's you can onboard more users for your organization. There's a nice grouping of org groups and then individual users, and your super user or your admin can have a lot of privileges on which users can access which clusters, and all of that can be managed even along with the backups. All of the RBAC can bleeds into the backups as well, so you can actually like make sure that all of the policies apply. So it's a very powerful suite of software now available as a SaaS, right? A lot of our customers are delighted. We have had we announced the product last week, and we have already crossed more than 150 to 200 registrations of customers trying the products out, and we're getting some tremendous reception.
Well, and like anything in life, if it's easy to do, you're more likely to do it. So if the backups are easy, and backups in Kubernetes land has not always been straightforward or easy. You may be able to snapshot an image or a file system, but getting that state of an application or the state of the data at some point and making sure that the two match and being able to like restore those on that time machine like basis, I think is really powerful. Now, you know that I'm a developer at heart, and there's definitely developer angles to some of these tools. It sounds like I can pick and choose and target restores or use this to move from cloud to cloud or even bring back data from a production or staging environment to a local Kubernetes running on my own desktop if I wanted, correct?
Yeah, you could back it up from any infrastructure, from any infrastructure to the backup. Then you could restore it to any other Kubernetes infrastructure, right? So the name backup is a little bit of a kind of slightly misleading sometimes. It's easy to communicate what the primary problem it solves with backup, but there's a lot of adjacent workflows, backup supports as well, especially around ability to kind of move data between different infrastructure or migrate from one infrastructure to the other infrastructure, right? In fact, even to an extent, sharing data models or data workflows. You can share like a backup between multiple users, multiple people can interact on the same set of data, restore it to their namespace, and then work on it. So yeah, there's a lot of plenty of adjacent use cases that you can leverage. Yes.
All right. So my last and most favorite thing you've announced last week has been the database as a service platform for Kubernetes. It sounds like this is a kind of first of its kind service that Portworx is offering, the ability to launch, a pre-selected defined set of databases. How do you expect developers and operators to leverage this database as a service?
So what we did, yeah, of course, it's kind of like a DBaaS for Kubernetes, right? PDS, Portworx Data Services. Um, at a very basic level, what it does is something that's extremely, crucial for developers and operators, but also uh, has been one of the biggest pain points for them to get it done easily, right? What PDS does is that it gives both the developers and the operators of the infrastructure a single click, easy to use, curated list of data services that they can deploy on any of the Kubernetes clusters that they have access to. But not just deployment. It goes from it takes care of all of the deployment is, yeah, of course, the day zero, day one, like you're getting installed, going. But it takes care of all the day two tasks for them. Like managing the databases runtime, if needed, upgrading it to a newer version, right? You just click and hit upgrade and it takes care of the upgrades. Even handling the underlying infrastructure upgrades for them, right? So they don't have to worry about, hey, I heard upgrade my underlying Kubernetes version. Is my database going to be up and running? PDS takes care of that, right? I mean, it kind of the control plane monitors, ensures the data service is always up. And plus, all of the capacity management, capacity planning, and performance tuning for running the database in production, the given database. And even going another step beyond is data protection and DR for these databases, right? Business continuity, right? What happens if there's an infrastructure outage, there is a data software corruption in the database, or there is a there's a user issue that somebody accidentally deleted the tables or whatever, right? So ability to restore it back, and because all these databases are automatically protected through Portworx's software and backed up, and they can be restored anywhere. And of course, with Portworx Enterprise and DR, we can provide application level live failover for these databases across clouds, right? So PDS comes with that, built in, right? So now the users don't have to worry about, hey, I'm running Postgres in production. What about business continuity? What about data protection? It's all comes built within the box, right? So that is the magic of Portworx Data Services. And it eases the life of the developers because they don't have to learn a lot about Kubernetes clusters or DBAs, because it simplifies deploying it there. For the operators, they don't have to become experts at every database that runs in their infrastructure, because trust me, a lot of Kubernetes platforms run a lot of different databases because a lot of applications that leverage them, right? They don't have to become experts at everything. Yeah.
And I love the fact this does sound like there's a local development aspect to this. Like, how many times have you seen a bug creep into production because the local developer was running a different version of the database
Yeah.
that was running into the production environment? So now they've got the exact same experience, it sounds like, getting a Postgres launched locally that matches the exact same version, stays up to date on the exact same
Yep.
rev schedule as your staging and your production environment. So now
Exactly.
no
Dev,
more.
staging, and production can be the same database versions and can run similar deployments. So you're not like, oh, I tested it in, Cassandra REPL 1. Oh, here you're running Cassandra REPL 3. Like, oh, I don't know what's going on here, right? You can have tested similarly. And, you don't need to worry about, oh, I need to be a Cassandra expert. I need to be a Mongo expert. I need to be a Postgres expert to stand up something, a Postgres streaming cluster. Like, you don't have to do that. PDS takes care of that for you. And that's the biggest advantage of Portworx Data Services. It simplifies your deployment, saves you a ton of time having to scratch your head about how do I run it in production safely, and of course protects it 24/7, 365 for you. Right.
Right. So I mean, this kind of overdoing infrastructure as a service. So Amazon's got RDS, maybe you're on Google Cloud SQL. No more do you have to make those kinds of decisions. You can have the same thing in a local environment, in the production environment, and anywhere in between. It sounds like
Yep. You
that's
nailed it,
great.
Calvin.
Yeah. No, I love it, and I really do get excited about the developer focus you all have. In addition to obviously the resilience and reliance on a stable and easy to manage production environment, those all resonate really well with me. So, Venkat, I want to thank you so much for being with us here today. From all the people here at Gestalt IT and myself at 6 Feet Up, excited to have you and talk about all the Portworx things. Any final words you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, exciting times. Calvin, lots of great momentum in the market. As I always tell people, there was a decade of VMs, long
Yeah,
gone. Last decade was a decade of cloud. Okay, we're done. This is a decade of Kubernetes. Anything is possible, right? You can build any app that you ever dreamt of and deploy it at scale with Kubernetes. And Portworx is like, what are you? Who's got your back on your data? It's Portworx, right? So, and we're here to work with our customers as partners and support developers in their journey. And hit us up at portworx.com. We're here. We are there for you always.
awesome. Thanks, Venkat.
Thanks, Calvin.